And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me is my beautiful co-host Laraib. As we are here to break down week 9 of the NFL season, officially past the halfway mark of the season, Laraib, and it has been a great half of the season so far. A lot of stuff to get into and break down. Really good week of football. After the past 2 weeks, a lot of teams on bye, a lot of just kind of weird matchups and pretty chalk outcomes. This is our first week, I should say. A lot of upsets, a lot of just really crazy results, and just some really awesome games as well. So, a lot to get into today, but unfortunately, and I will say this, we were filming this on 10:30 on Tuesday morning. So the trade deadline today is at 4 p.m. And we've had some trades go through, notably Jalen Phillips to the Eagles. We just had a Jacoby Myers trade break that I don't think moves the ticker that much, but a lot of trades that'll be breaking. And if any break during the podcast, we'll be able to talk about it as they release, Larav. But let's go ahead and let's go into those picks.
Obviously, the biggest victory of all from week 9 was me in the picks. Um, I mean, my greatest performance of the year so far, and that came on the backs of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the frozen tundra of Pennsylvania. Really shocked Daniel Jones and the Colts, and they were able to pull off the upset. The Falcons were right there, and that could have made this week really, really interesting. But they pulled through, and then my lock, the Seahawks. I knew they were being disrespected on Sunday Night Football. Then they go out there and dominate. And then the Cowboys, we'll talk about them in a second, stinker on Monday night. And that was the week, folks.
Yeah, I mean, I can't be too. I mean, I'm going to be upset at myself because the Atlanta pick was just so close. And then, man, the Falcons just blew it at the end. And then obviously Dallas. Blah. So my upset lock didn't hit. I did like my Buffalo pick over Kansas City. I thought that was sharp. So I'm proud of that one. But everything else, even the ones we agreed on, like Green Bay losing to Carolina, just the biggest spread of the week. Detroit, another team that if the line was there, I would definitely would have locked them. They lose to JJ McCarthy in a game that my best bet was the Lions spread. So really just felt off on this week. But that means it was a really interesting week. A lot of weeks, a lot of games that were upsets and unpredictable. So pretty excited by the overall results. But let's go ahead and start with last night's action, Laura. Monday Night Football. Cardinals take down the Cowboys 27-17. A game where Cowboys offense at home really didn't show up for the first time all season long. And they weren't able to run the ball that well whatsoever. The pass game was pretty hit or miss all game long. And the Cardinals, give credit to them, coming off a bye. They've had a pretty roller coaster ride of a season, starting off 3-0, losing 5 straight, and then winning this game, or losing 4 straight, excuse me. What's their record?
That's a very good question.
Two and 3-5 now? Yes. So 3-5. So they won their first two, lost 5 in a row, and now they just beat the Cowboys on the road with no Kyler Murray, which makes things interesting. But let's start with the Cowboys side of this, Laurab. Just really, really weird season. There has been moments where they've shown really high performance against good teams, especially offensively. And to have a dud like this, really, in my mind, kind of crosses them off for not. They could still have an outside shot to make the playoffs, but in my mind, they are no longer considered a threat to really compete in the playoffs.
Yeah, this would have been a huge spot for them, Lewis, if they found a way to win this game. Jaden Daniels gets injured, and it looks like, the honest thing or the smart thing would be to shut him down for the season. And then, of course, the Giants, their season is also done. And so you would think, okay, this could turn into a two-horse race, but after this loss, it kind of takes all wind out of the sails. The Cowboys did trade for Logan Wilson, linebacker from the Bengals, who had trouble getting playing time for them. So he's going to be a huge addition for this Cowboys defense. No, but I mean, it kind of just kind of wouldn't say derails their season, but it's going to make it a really uphill battle, especially when a team like the Bears, which just won a big game, the Vikings won a big game against those teams. That's who the Cowboys are going to be competing with, and a loss like this, and especially at home when we thought they would put up huge numbers, this is really disappointing.
So now going into the bye, Cowboys 3-4-1 so far. I mean, just below average. We'll see. I think Schottenheimer has been an overall positive for in a lot of people's eyes, considering the expectations going into the year. We knew the defense would be bad. Obviously, trading Micah Parsons right before the season started. Even with Micah, I don't know how much better this defense would be. Just the overall talent around and adding a linebacker who was struggling at playing time on the worst defense in football doesn't exactly move me. So we'll see how they look coming out of the bye. But even if they make the playoffs, I just cannot see this team being a threat, especially with how stacked the NFC is, what we're about to get to in a moment. Going and looking at the Cardinals, this is a more interesting discussion for me, Laura, because since Kyler got hurt, I put that in air quotes because potential soft
Was
benching, which
Battlefield 6 released
Battlefield 6 release, and then the double whammy, Call of Duty Black Ops 7
next
on the
Friday?
horizon, right? So, and we saw Jacoby Brissett lead a very respectable offensive approach. Marvin Harrison looked really good in that first half. Definitely gave some people a good little scare post Halloween. But they ran the ball pretty effectively. They're missing a lot of guys, and he still commanded a respectable offensive effort, albeit against the Cowboys defense. And so far this season, he's been solid. So you look at what the long term is for Kyler Murray, and I don't really know. Obviously, Kyler Murray's made the playoffs once, and in that one playoff game, did not look very impressive whatsoever. Now going into this is year 7 for Kyler Murray in Arizona, and it really feels like we're still waiting on him to put it all together. And at some point, Larob, it just is what it is. So do you see? Obviously, neither of us think Jacoby Brissett is a long term option for the Cardinals, but is it time to finally look at other options if you're the Cardinals going into next season?
I definitely think it is. I don't know how many more games you can expect them to win this season, and what sort of quarterback class we're looking at coming towards the draft, but it's just starting to get to that point. There was if he would have played this game, I really feel like they were saying he was going to be, some sort of their gadget guy, you could say, if he was able to start. And so it's just a lot of weird things coming out. We have known about his effort for a long time now, and so. I think it's time. It's almost to that Tua situation. He's not as bad as Tua, but it's almost that same sort of ballpark, right? You have some sort of floor, but what is the ceiling? What is the max potential you can get out of him? And if we keep on, or if they keep on waiting to see that year after year after year, you're just going to be sort of that middling or bottom of the pack sort of organization. And I think they expect a little bit more. But the bigger highlight for me in this game, Lewis, was this Arizona Cardinals defense. They made Dak Prescott and that offense look pedestrian. And the big name that stood out for everybody on the broadcast and just looking at the field was Walter Nolan III, rookie making his first ever start, and he had some huge plays in the run. He had a huge sack on Dak Prescott and a huge moment. Him and Will Johnson, the two rookies, they were the two highlights for this Cardinals defense. And this was, if you're a Cardinals fan, this was what you were sort of expecting out of this defense coming into this year. You were thinking, okay, Jonathan Gannon, another year to really sink his teeth into this defense, get this unit up to what we think, or what they think they should be playing at. And this was a very outstanding performance from their defense.
So maybe going into next offseason, we're looking at this team as maybe a quarterback away type of team, right? Because you mentioned that this rookie class has pretty much been a home run for them, right? Because throughout Kyler's career, and as long as I can really remember for the Cardinals, except for a few moments in the mid 2000s and 2010s, the defense really has been the issue, right? And if you're able to solidify that side of the ball, they've always had playmakers, right? They've had David Johnson's, Larry Fitzgerald, now they have Marvin Harrison, and just they have good offensive talent. It's just finding that combo where this could be a destination for a downtrodden quarterback who needs to find a new opportunity, right? Now, you'd like to think that could be Kyler, but the money you're already giving him is just out of this world, right? So who could that be? Who could be on the market? Do you try to draft a guy? That just seems like a crapshoot, really starting it all over. I think, maybe even go big game hunting, right? Maybe you test the waters on a Matt Stafford or on an older guy who could
Kirk
potentially become
Cousins.
available. We'll see about that one. Hey, Derek Carr, you want to come out of retirement, big dog? Um, but I just think the Cardinals are in a very confounding position that I hope for their fans who really deserve some good football. I hope that they could figure something out to make them a competitive team because that performance last night is just a nice glimmer of hope for these Arizona fans. But let's go ahead, Laura. Let's go into our main topic of the day. So we just watched Bills Chiefs for the 20th time in a row, it feels like. All these games are always classics between the two. And it made me start thinking about potential playoff matchups this playoff season, right? Because you kind of figure if the AFC goes the way we both imagine it will, you're going to get the Bills Chiefs at the end, and it's going to be a classic. And this game in particular, it would be interesting because obviously with the Bills winning in the regular season, in all likelihood, Chiefs with 4 losses, Bills looking in a good spot to, continue to push for that division title. If this game was to be in an AFC championship or in a playoff game, it would be the last home game for the Bills in Highmark Stadium, a stadium that has seen a lot of horror throughout its days. Obviously, 4 straight Super Bowl losses, a lot of heartbreak in that stadium. So potentially wiping the demons away with one last win going into the Super Bowl, or the Chiefs doing it once again to the Bills come playoff time. So, but that just made the wheels turning in my mind of what are some other playoff matchups and just potential matchups that we could see this postseason that we would be really excited for. So let's start in the AFC, Laura. What is a matchup that you would be super excited to see come playoff time?
My number one matchup I have written down is the Denver Broncos versus the New England Patriots. A little changing of the guard in those two teams. They have a lot of history, a la Peyton Manning versus Tom Brady. And now you have the two young guns come in, right? You have Bo Nix versus Drake May. Once again, Denver with the outstanding defense and New England on the backs of Drake May. I feel like this is going to be a matchup we're going to see for many years to come. But to watch it this year, I feel like that would be a really, really fun matchup. In the AFC, we usually have some crappy matchup, especially in the wild card. You'll have your
A la AFC
Steelers.
South.
Yeah, a lot of AFC South, a lot of, Bills versus, the Broncos last year. That was bad. But I feel like these are two teams who kind of match up well. It'll be a lot of Drake May and what can he do? And then Bo Nix. Does he have enough to, go on the road to New England on a big spot and come up with a huge win? I feel like there's a lot of history and tradition around this game, as well as, the future of what the AFC holds.
Yeah, I like the matchup between the two second-year quarterbacks and then just both defenses really being able to flex their muscles. I think both these teams are going to have just really good playoff cases. They're built for playoff football. So, especially just two teams that we haven't really seen in a while, be super competitive and have a legitimate, Super Bowl aspirations at this point. I don't think it's a far cry to say. I'm going to go with a matchup that we saw last year. We've seen many a time before. But it's just super exciting when these teams play, especially given the circumstances of this season. And that's going to be Bills Ravens. How it's looking right now, I think the most likely outcome for this matchup to happen would be in the first round, with the Ravens clawing their way into a wild card potentially and facing the Bills on the road. And obviously, Lamar, Josh Allen should just be enough, right there to just have an awesome matchup. But just all the other things, the Ravens figuring out the defense. Obviously, we had that week 1 matchup between the two teams where the Bills found a way to come back and just gave us still probably one of the best games of the season so far. And just really, really exciting football between these two teams. So obviously, that's just always going to be an awesome matchup, seeing Josh Allen and Lamar face off.
Yeah, that's a always going to be cinema. My second one, I'm going to go with the Harbaugh Bowl. Chargers versus the Ravens. This would be a little tricky. I think we'd have to move into the divisional round to see something like this happen. But to see the two Harbaughs match up together, I think that'd be a really fun game. Now the Chargers, Joe Walt done for the season. We'll see what they can do offensively for the remainder of the year. But the two Harbaughs, we saw them in the Super Bowl. Now to see them in a playoff game, that would be cinema.
And then my final AFC one, Laura, I have the Patriots against the Kansas City Chiefs. I just think the Chiefs have pretty much conquered every AFC opponent, right? They've conquered Josh, Lamar. They've beaten CJ Stroud, who won't be in it this year. They've beaten We've seen him beat the Broncos and the Chargers time in, time again. So this will be the first time we really see Drake May against Mahomes. They don't play this regular season, so it will be the first time. And if you remember, Joe Burrow in his second year goes into Kansas City and beats the Chiefs en route to the Super Bowl. So it's not a far cry to say that Drake May would have a chance because we've seen this before with the good defense. I don't love the playmakers for the Patriots, but they certainly have enough to field a competitive offense. And it would just be a fun matchup, right? The Chiefs is just constant powerhouse in the AFC and the new blood, right? To see if we can really find that serious threat to challenge them come postseason time. So I just think, like, can Drake May step up to the ultimate challenge in the AFC, which is the Kansas City Chiefs, or are the Chiefs just going to vanquish another young and upcoming quarterback? So I think that would just be a really exciting matchup.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Let's flip on over to the NFC side. I think there's a lot more interesting matchups over here. For my first one, I am going to say Green Bay versus Seattle. Maybe this one's a little nostalgic for me, but a hungry Green Bay team destined to go to the Super Bowl has to go through Seattle. And the defense comes up clutch. I feel like that would be very similar to what we would see in a matchup today, and I'd be very excited to see if Jordan Love has what it takes to go to Lumen Field and win deep in the playoffs.
Hey, did Jimmy Graham get that first down, Laura?
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. If only they had the eagle eye technology in
Ah,
2020 or 2019.
it's so funny because it's that random game where the Packers really didn't do anything after that. But obviously, you had the incredible NFC Championship game that you were very fond of in 2012, but or 2013, excuse me. But it's just that moment. I remember just like talking with you about it. You were so upset, Jimmy
Now,
Graham.
if they would have gotten the first down, the Seahawks offense was not doing shit that game. So I
No.
mean, we were probably still losing, but still want to throw my beer can at the TV when I'm older.
And then a matchup that I think we were deprived of last year, that these teams are a little different from how dominant they were last year, but I'm still just super excited to see it if it's possible, is the Eagles against Detroit. Most likely this would take place in an NFC championship. So being for all the marbles would just make it that much more interesting. But the way that you know, both these teams super high flying last year, and then obviously the Lions just drop a stinker in the NFC divisional round against Washington, and the Eagles just dominate Washington en route to the Super Bowl. That was the matchup that we were waiting to see. Now the Lions aren't as banged up. Different coordinators, obviously, in this matchup, but still, just offensive talent, defensive talent all across the board. Just two hyper kind of crazy head coaches throwing all their chips in at the table. I just think it would be an awesome matchup. Two quarterbacks who they win a lot, but they have a lot of question marks around them. And winning would definitely just continue to build on these guys' resumes. So just probably the biggest heavyweight matchup in this conference so far that I'd be really excited to see.
Yeah. I'm gonna go with Chicago versus Detroit. Now I know we're gonna see this matchup once again, week 18 in Chicago. That game might not matter too much. And we already saw this team early in the season, Chicago go to Detroit. But I think if we saw this, in the wild card round, where Ben Johnson finally, after a full season, really got to put his fingerprints all over this Bears team, they found a way to sneak into the playoffs and they get to go to Detroit on wild card weekend. I feel like that would be just an insane game. Ben Johnson returns for the second time to his former team, but can they get it done in the playoffs? I think that'd be a really fun matchup.
Yeah, I just, we'll see about the Bears whether or not they can really crack that. That would obviously be like a wild card matchup, but a super interesting one. Caleb Williams finally getting some playoff action, and we'll see if he can continue to build off some of these explosive offensive performances that they put up the past few weeks. My final one here, Laura. There's just so many good matchups in the NFC. A lot of history between these. but I'm going to go with one that we've seen time in, time again, and that is the Los Angeles Rams against the Detroit Lions. Just obviously, you have the battle of the former quarterbacks for both teams, Stafford and Goff, facing their former teams and coaches in some instances, and just how we're like I'm just thinking heavyweight, heavyweight. The Rams have been awesome all season long. And then the Lions, don't need to say much about their pedigree in the NFC. But seeing this game, hopefully in an NFC championship, would be awesome en route to a Super Bowl. And then, I mean, it's kind of the same thing with the Eagles, right? All the offensive talent, the young defensive talent on the Rams and the Lions as well. I think it'll be a high scoring game, a game that'll always comes down to the end, always going to be super exciting. Might have a questionable call here and there, but that will just add to the intrigue and the mystique of the game.
Yeah, they've matched up before, but I feel like there was probably a bigger gap between the two teams. But this year, maybe I would feel like the Rams are a little bit ahead of them in this case, and so yeah, that'd be a really fun matchup. For my final one, I'm gonna say Seattle versus Tampa Bay, the Darnold Mayfield Bowl, the two downtrodden quarterbacks who were didn't find a home anywhere. Maybe Darnold did last year, but he got kicked out once again. Finally now here with some good franchises with good teams around them and really thriving and what who are the archetypes of the quarterbacks who high draft round pick really weren't able to pan out with their first team or their second team or their third team, but really found a home and they're proving right now that sometimes it's the organizations who make the quarterbacks, not the other way around.
Yeah, and then one final one I wanted to throw in there is 49ers Seahawks. Now, this would probably have to happen as a first round matchup if Seattle can find a way to win the division. But obviously the history between these teams is electric. The 49ers just finding ways to scratch and claw their way to maintain competitiveness. And if Shanahan can beat the Seahawks yet again with the state of this 49ers team, we might not film that next day. I'll just say that it might
All
be
I'm
a
gonna say is
downtrodden.
terrorist Geno Smith is no longer on the team, so we have a
And
little bit
then
of a better
Sam
shot.
Darnold come playoff time. We'll see. Hey, this is gonna be an awesome NFC playoffs. A lot of super, and there's even like a lot more matchups that would be awesome and interesting, intertwining. A lot of Eagles matchups, a lot of 49ers. Just the history. I feel like the past 5 years, it's pretty much been the same batch of NFC teams. Whereas the AFC, you get a lot of teams kind of switching in and out, and it always just comes down to the same two or three every year. Whereas the NFC, it's just a revolving door of the same crop of teams. So super, super exciting to see these come playoff time. One more football topic that I wanted to hit on before we go to Thursday Night Football is we really haven't talked much about the rookie quarterbacks this year. Now, notably, they're not that many. It's pretty much just two that have had significant starting time. And the two that have started have had a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups. But let's start with the one who's shown the most promise, Laraib. What have you made of Jackson Dart's season so far?
I think you and I were really harsh on him to start the year. We thought he was a little bit gimmicky with all his rushing ability and his lack of passing and his lot as a lot of turnovers. But I have to give him credit where credit's due. I mean, he's lost his number one wide receiver, he lost his starting running back, and he's put together a decent rookie season. He started to limit the turnovers, and his rushing ability, you can't take that for granted. He hasn't taken many sacks. And he introduces another level of another dynamic to this really stale Giants offense, and he's still going to be what, a C plus B minus probably when he ends up finishing the year, but I feel like he's comfortably on his way to winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, and I think he's going to continue to improve. Now the Giants are going to continue to lose games, and we'll see if the ball sticks around, but with what he has to work with, that defense is actually kind of terrible. They're just susceptible to the pass, to the run. They can get after the quarterback a little bit, but they haven't done Jackson Dart any favors in New York. And I feel like given what he's gotten so far out of the organization, I've been impressed so far.
Yeah, I would say I'm leaning on like a B minus for Dart so far this season. Obviously, he has exceeded my expectations going into the year. I think he has proven to this point, knock on wood through his 7 starts or however many, that he can be a franchise quarterback. He's shown that level of traits that you can build an offense around him, even with the adversity, right? Still puts up 24 points against the 49ers last week, throwing to Wandale Robinson, handing it off to Devin Singletary. So he's showing that offensive prowess that he can be an engine for a capable offense. And once you get these guys back, you just feel really excited about the Giants going forward that they have a guy that they can have faith in. It's not this revolving door of just downtrodden quarterbacks. So, or Daniel Jones, but sometimes guys just figure things out. So, really, really impressed with Dart so far, given the expectation going in. And then we get to the number one overall pick, Laraib, the guy who's the least talked about, number one overall pick, gets the least amount of media, least amount of shine. And some of that is a part of the market size in Tennessee, not getting a bunch of, love across media. But he also has not helped his case whatsoever, right? And just very unimpressive start to this season. Obviously, the situation is nowhere near ideal for what a quarterback would go into, but that's kind of the expectation for a number one overall pick is your first season. There's a reason this team drafts number one overall. They do not have the supplemental talent to build around you, but his decision making, Larab, is very brutal to say the least. And the fact that we're, already halfway through the season, he started every single game, and we're still like, all right, when's the moment gonna really shine where he kind of puts this all together? Has not happened yet. So what do you make of Cam Ward?
He has just been just plain awful. Even like for a rookie quarterback, his turnovers, his decision making has just been atrocious. They found a way to win that game against the Cardinals because the Cardinals just decided to give it to them. But I mean, he is like his like throwing the football sometimes seems like it's a chore for him. In this game, he's rolling out to his left, all right, is a little bit on the move, but he kind of just throws this pass that just comes out like a turd, honestly, and just rolls into the dirt. And then against the Patriots, I mean, he is cocking his arm back to throw the football, and it just whoop right out of the back of his hand, and turns into a Patriots touchdown. And so those are some things he's gonna have to clean up. Obviously, the offensive line's not there. Obviously, the defense is not there. But besides that, I still haven't seen that huge, like, oh, wow, great, great throw by Ward or, fantastic scramble, fantastic decision to do this or X, Y, and Z. I'm going to put him squarely at a D minus.
I mean, just looking at his numbers this season long, right? He's 18th in passing yards. He's last for tied for 32nd in touchdowns, only 5 touchdowns through 9 games. He's thrown 6 interceptions. He's had 4 lost fumbles, so that's 5 touchdowns to 10 turnovers this season,
It was
and it's
Daniel Jones territory.
yeah, it's felt worse than that to be fair. And then 32nd in quarterback rating with a 23.9. So obviously, the situation isn't ideal, but we've seen a lot of guys overcome pretty bad situations and coaching, obviously. Now, do I think that they need to immediately pivot off Cam Ward? No, I will say he's shown some high level ability and creativity, able to make some impressive throws across his body. But they don't have any receivers, any running backs notable. Their offensive line is bad, and they already fired their head coach. So, nothing really situationally wise is promising for him. So to think, hey, young rookie quarterback, let's build around him. Let's get a coach who can cultivate him. This is kind of, we talked about it beforehand. This reminds me a lot of, potentially what Jared Goff went through his rookie season in St. Louis with old 7-9. I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Jeff something.
Jeff something. Oh man, I'm gonna have to. That's it's gonna come to
Jeff
me at some
Fisher.
point.
Jeff Fisher.
Jeff Fisher, yes. And that was just quarterback hell, right? And then they bring in Sean McVay, they bring in some offensive talent, some veteran offensive linemen, and Jared Goff starts to figure it out. So there is hope that we've seen this before, that we can reclaim Cam Ward and use some of these positive creativity and some of his strengths to use in a winning football format. But so far this season, not a lot to look forward to. And honestly, Larab, if we're in year 2 and we're halfway through and we've built more things around him, in the NFL, it's we these guys have so many reps coming into the NFL, and it's not like Cam Ward was this Drake May 22-year-old coming out of the draft or JJ McCarthy super raw. he played 5 years at college, right? And in that final year, he was the oldest guy on his Miami team. Actually, I think there was like a 29-year-old tight end or something weird. But um, so you kind of expected Cam Ward to come in as a polished prospect, and the fact that he's struggling this mightily so far through 9 weeks is troubling if you're the Tennessee Titans. But I'm not going to completely throw him away just yet. But let's go ahead, Laraib. Let's move on to Thursday night football. We have. Ooh, I don't have it actually out in
The
front of me.
Las
What do we got?
Vegas Raiders traveling to Denver to play the Broncos in what is going to be a stinker of another Thursday night game. The Broncos coming off a huge victory against the Texans in a game that really vaults them to 7-2 and puts them in a good spot to maybe really win their division. Most definitely good spot to make the playoffs. And then the Raiders, you know, credit to them for going for two instead of giving us another tie in overtime. But Geno Smith, man, it's starting to get to that time of the year. Now the Broncos are favored by 8.5 points. And I got to roll with the Broncos. I mean, even with no Surtain, they really boxed up that Texans offense. And now you're telling me Geno Smith is not going to be due for a couple picks in this game. Give me the Broncos 27-15.
I will say, with Brock Bowers returning to the lineup this past week, this offense looked a lot more dynamic. With him on the field, just that steady force, 3 touchdowns, just dominating that Jaguars secondary last week. So he definitely adds an extra element of just a game changer on that side of the ball. But this offensive line is just not trustworthy whatsoever. They still can't get an effective running game going with Ashton Genty. And this is certainly not the spot or the defense to really get that going against um, Broncos. Most sacks so far through 9 weeks. And I just think that's going to ramp up in this game. Can the Broncos offense just do enough to keep a kind of a stiff arm on this Raiders defense the entire time? I think they will. So I have the Broncos winning, but I have the Raiders covering in this one. I'm going to go Broncos 21 to Raiders 16.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap it up for our week 9 review of the NFL. But before we go, we told y'all on Thursday we are going to talk about it. Welcome to Derry. My co-host only watched the first episode, and so that is as far as I will go, not to spoil anything for him in episode 2. But Lewis, welcome back to the It universe. Obviously the hit movie, I believe in 2016, that was a huge thing. And then It Chapter 2, maybe not the greatest, critical acclaim or box office success, but still like a really good movie. That was a great continuation of Chapter 1. And now here we are for It 2. And they really showed or highlighted a lot of what we saw in It 2016, a lot of younger kids. As a highlight of the show, they're getting terrorized by it. I want to start off first by asking you, this is a 10 episode series, but we didn't see any Pennywise in the first episode. How did you feel about that?
Clearly you feel Pennywise. Clearly, with all the references with the sewers and in the pipes and just his presence alone, that opening scene where Maddie's in the car with the family and it gets creepier and creepier and starts to build up, ramp up, and then the big reveal of this flying little demon monster thing that just comes through and pacifier
Oh,
flies out of the window. I'll just say that was definitely shocking, and it felt like, yeah, we're back in Derry. This is it at its full force capacity. What we know from Stephen King and his ability to just conjure up these horrors, right? And no, definitely a far cry from the movies in terms of expectation, right? You have this young group of kids kind of come together looking for their friend. And really, in the first 2 movies, obviously, you have some crazy twists and turns and just horrifying moments, but you don't really see them just. I don't want to spoil too much, but uh, the end of the episode was just shocking to me and how ruthless it was. I'll say that. I'm interested to see where they go with the military route in this movie. It kind of felt, or in this series, it felt when me and my roommate were watching, we were just like, all right, we're back to the military base. Not sure how this is gonna tie in. Maybe I missed something there. But interesting to see where that angle kind of plays in to the young kids and their expedition. But I mean, Stephen King playing all of his hits, it definitely hits all the horror notes and all the horror themes that you expect from this series. And yes, you're right, no Pennywise so far. And it's like, all right, well, when is he gonna finally show up in that clown face, that smile, the red balloon? But I don't think we're gonna be waiting too much longer.
Well, certainly on episode 2, I can tell you that much.
Okay,
This
that's what I
show,
figured.
written and directed by Andy and Barbara Muschietti, they did it. Their brother and sister. They did the first and second movie. Now they're here, expanding on this lore for this show. This kind of puts together a lot of like the pre or the early parts of the book, that wasn't shown in the first two movies. And so we're kind of expanding on that lore. I really wish you would have watched the second episode because we had a little bit more to talk about in that regard. But so their plan for this show so far is obviously we're in 1962 in this first season, but they want to go back for a second season to what is it, 1937 or 1935 for some other background lore they had. And then after that, for season 3, they want to go back even more to the past than that. And so this show, they have a lot of huge expectations for it. Maybe those other two seasons haven't been completely greenlit, but from what we've seen so far through the first two episodes of this season, it really feels like they're building this huge universe here, and they're going to continue to build on that.
Yeah, it's really just like the out of reality moments, right? With the little boy with is sitting in his bed with the lampshade, right, changing, and then you have the scene when they're in the movie theater and you see the kids stuck in the movie, and it's just those out of reality popping moments that really adds to just the spectacle of what you're seeing from this series. But a lot to look forward to. Horror isn't my forte, right? I get spooked pretty quickly, but this definitely keeps you on your toes all throughout. So I was impressed because you said 10 episodes, correct?
Hmm.
Well, with the pacing, I thought it was very well paced the first episode. I wasn't really had any big lulls. I guess I was a little confused with what they're doing with the military base, but even those scenes themselves were pretty interesting. Like I know we're gonna build towards something with that. So just overall super excited for the direction of this is going to go. And I don't know if this is going to be an every week thing reviewing the most recent It series, but so far, Laraib, what would you give this series a grade? And is it going to continue your attention moving into the rest of the series?
For a grade, right now, I'm gonna put it at a solid 8 out of 10. I really enjoyed it being back into the Derry world, the It verse, you could say. Obviously, the highs are still coming. We're gonna see Pennywise do some crazy things if you've watched any of the trailers, and so I think it's gonna hit another level once we actually get to see him. But I'm really excited, and yeah, I think I'll continue watching it week by week. I think you and I maybe we might do a little mid-season check-in and then season finale review.
Yeah, so definitely look forward to that if you are a fan of the series and if you're a fan of us, right? So a lot to look forward to. And it was kind of perfect, started like right before Halloween to get that everyone on their horror kick, everyone who's just kind of like, all right, let me check this out. And I believe, me watching the first episode, you watching the first two, that I would also give it an 8 out of 10, that it will continue to capture my attention moving forward into the rest of the series. So definitely looking forward to watching the rest. But Larab, that'll do it for our episode this week. Getting more and more trade things that'll be very interesting. And we'll, if there's any super big trades that come down before 4 p.m. Central Time today, we'll discuss those at the top of our Thursday episode. But Larab, is there anything else you want to say before we get out of here today?
No, I think that's the First Goal Podcast signing off.
Peace.